Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In this video I am going to be examining my top 15 singles of the 1980s that almost made number one but fell one place short. This is my top 15 number twos of the 1980s. So what I've done is I've created a list of all the songs that I really like that stalled at that position. I've taken a look at the songs that held them off the number one spot. I've done a ranking and then I've done some qualifiers. So this is based on whether or not they've had number ones at any other time in their career or indeed in that decade. I've also looked at whether the song was better or worse than the song that held it off number one, and there's been points adjusted accordingly. I've considered whether or not either of the songs was a cover version. And lastly, did it actually make number one but by somebody else in a different recording of it? All of this has been crunched and has produced my list. So you'll have seen on this side here just exactly what I did in terms of points on and off. So with all of these qualifiers applied, I've now got a top 15. Let's dive straight in at number 15, which is a three-way tie between three songs. The first of which is Paul McCartney's No More Lonely Nights. I love this song. If you've watched other Paul McCartney videos of mine, you'll know that I personally think this should have reached number one. But what kept it off? Well, the answer is Freedom by Wham. And I've got to admit, it's a better song. Plus, the fact that McCartney has had multiple career number ones over the amount of time he was recording meant that this tumbled down the list a bit from where I'd originally placed it to land in this equal 15 spot. The second sharing 15th spot is Gold by Spandau Ballet. Obviously, they had a number one eventually with True, but what kept it off number one this time round was Give It Up by Kaylee and the Sunshine Band, which is a great song. And then my last one, number 15, is The Jam, The Bitterest Pill I Ever Had to Swallow, which I think is a great song. Lots of number ones for The Jam during the 80s. And it was kept off number one by two songs. The first was Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, which is a good song. The second of which was a travesty and was Pass the Dutchie by Musical Youth. Surely The Jam deserve another number one over that awful Pass the Dutchie. And so that actually gained it a few points. Moving on to number 14, and we see the appearance of Prince with 1999. This is a song that I must admit I never used to like very much, but maybe the fact that it's no longer being heard so ubiquitously as it was around about the year 1999, I've grown to really love and appreciate. Held off number one by I Want to Know What Love Is by Foreigner. And of course, Prince eventually hit the number one spot with The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. There is no 13. That's not because I'm superstitious, but because I have two entries with the same score at number 12. And these are Only You by Yazoo. Now, eventually, Vince Clarke did achieve number one status with Erasure, but Yazoo never did. And what kept that off number one is a travesty, a horrible song. It's A Little Piece by Nicole, the Eurovision winner. Detest this song. It made my top 10 worst number ones of the 80s. So obviously, points gained for Yazoo. Sharing 12th spot is Madonna with Live to Tell. Now, did Madonna really need yet another number one single? Well, when you consider that the thing that kept it off number one was Falco's Rock Me Amadeus, and the answer is yes. Yes, it did. Much, much better song. Number 11 is Tracey Ullman's They Don't Know. Now, this is the first song that I'm going to address that's a cover. It is a cover of Kirsty MacColl's single from 1979. And it's pretty much a straight cover, but it's a great song and it's a great performance. And it was kept off number one, unfortunately, by a song that is better. And that was Karma Chameleon by Culture Club. Absolutely cracking number one. It was number one for a lot of weeks, so wouldn't have been a shame if there'd been a week given up to see Tracey Ullman hit number one with They Don't Know and achieve a number one single by dint of writing it to Kirsty MacColl. Into number 10, and whilst I would only pick an artist once on these lists, Prince gets in a second time, but this time as a writer, and it's for Manic Monday by the Bangles. Now, Bangles did get to number one with Eternal Flame, one of my favourite 15 1980s number ones as it happens, but it was kept off number one by something that I don't really like, which is Chain Reaction. I think it's a worse song. I like Diana Ross and I like the Bee Gees, but the two of them mashed together, I really don't like the combination with Chain Reaction. At number 9, I have got Kim Wilde with Kids in America, her debut single. Great song that I only recently discovered was written by her brother and her father. And unfortunately, the thing that kept it off number one is a song I love. Admittedly, it's a cover version, but it's This Old House by Shakin' Stevens. Number 8 is Against All Odds by Phil Collins. Now, Phil Collins is very much maligned these days, but Against All Odds is a supreme song. It's fantastic, from that film. And it was kept off number one by not one, but 2 different songs. One of which is The Reflex by Duran Duran, which I think is great and I love it. The second of which is Hello by Lionel Richie, which was saccharine, but it's a good song, so I can't really knock it completely. And number 7 is Aha, and a song that everybody thinks was a number one hit single, Take On Me. It wasn't. It stalled at number 2 behind a travesty, which was my number 2 worst 80s single of all time, The Power of Love by Jennifer Rush. Now, Aha did reach number 1 with their subsequent single, The Sun Always Shines on TV, which is actually less lauded than the wonderful Take On Me. And Take On Me itself reached number 1 in a cover version in the 2000s. At number 6, I have placed Slade, My Oh My. Now, I adore Slade. And they had 6 number ones before this. So they're not exactly lacking in chart success, but this would have been a pinnacle final chart number 1 for a great band. And what kept it off number 1 was Only You by the Flying Pickets. Now, you've already heard how much I like Only You, but I loathe, detest, and hate the Flying Pickets version. I think that's a travesty, and it takes a beautiful song and, for me, completely wrecks it. Into my top 5 now, and from this point onwards, these artists did not achieve career singles number 1s. The first of which is Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I think this is a fantastic song. It was released twice. It was released as Everybody Wants to Run the World and still didn't get to the top. And this was held off number 1 by another travesty. This time it was We Are the World by USA for Africa. Now, nothing against charity singles. They do some great stuff. They do a lot of good. But unfortunately, they stink the charts up with rubbish cover versions or horribly written songs like this. Sharing the number 4 spot is Private Investigations by Dire Straits. Again, a really special song. Go and watch my 1980s albums and you'll see what I think of Private Investigations and just how different this was for a single in 1982. Kept off number 1 by our old friend again, The Eye of the Tiger by Survivor. But in this case, I genuinely think Private Investigations is the better song. But Eye of the Tiger is still really, really good. It just was at number 1 for so long. Top 3 time. And 3, Kaylee by Marillion. Wonderful ballad. I'm not a big Marillion fan. I do own Misplaced Childhood, but I don't listen to it very often. But Kaylee's a phenomenal song. And this was kept off number 1 by a charity single. Again. This time it was You'll Never Walk Alone by The Crowd for the Bradford Fire disaster. Again, You Never Walk Alone is a good song. But a cover version and a not as good number 1, it caused Kaylee to rise up the chart a little bit on my top 15. Number 2 is a song that many people would put possibly their greatest number 2 of all time. Certainly the greatest Christmas song that never reached the top of all time. for me anyway, and that's Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues, featuring Kirsty MacColl, which means she features a second time as well. And Fairy Tale of New York needs no introduction. Kept off #1 spot at Christmas by the Pet Shop Boys, whom I love, with a cover version of Always on My Mind, which was a Willie Nelson song. I don't hate Always on My Mind, but I don't think it's as good a song as Fairy Tale of New York. And finally, at #1, neither the singer, the writer, or the band achieved career single #1s. Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years, sung by Paul Carrack absolutely brilliantly. Really affecting song from 1989. Held off the #1 spot by something that's not a travesty, but I don't think is anywhere near as good. And it's Something's Gotten Hold of My Heart by Mark Almond, featuring Gene Pitney, who did the original. So it is a cover version, kinda. Living Years would have been a worthy #1 and is my favourite #2 single of the 1980s. So that concludes this video. Let me know in comments below what you think I've got right and wrong. What kind of songs did I miss out? I did have like a backup list, things like Radio Gaga by Queen or Poison by Alice Cooper, Save a Prayer, Ghostbusters. What great singles that stalled at #2 from the 80s do you think need to be reappraised, particularly by me? So just remember to like, subscribe if you haven't already. There's only 12 of you who have, so let's have some more. And hit the bell to receive notifications of future videos. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.